Sophia was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. She couldn't sleep, no matter how hard she tried. She was thinking about her dream from the night before, when she and her little hamster friend Apollo had visited the moon. Sophia closed her eyes and tried to drift off to sleep, but her mind was racing. She couldn't stop thinking about all the amazing things she and Apollo had seen on the moon. She remembered the craters and the rough, rocky terrain. She also remembered how bright and beautiful the moon had looked in the darkness of space. As Sophia was laying there, she heard a faint scratching noise coming from Apollo's cage. She opened her eyes and looked over at the cage, wondering what her little hamster friend was up to. To her surprise, she saw that Apollo was busy working on the wooden space shuttle he had built. She watched as Apollo carefully checked and double-checked the shuttle, making sure everything was in order. Sophia couldn't help but smile at the sight of her little hamster friend working so hard. She knew that he was just as excited about space travel as she was. Sophia wasn't sure if she was awake or still dreaming. She felt a strange sense of fear wash over her as she was laying in bed, unsure of what was real and what was just a figment of her imagination. But then she remembered something her granny had told her. Always be brave and adventurous. With those words in mind, Sophia sat up in bed and took a deep breath. She knew that she couldn't let fear hold her back. I've been working on the space shuttle all night, getting it ready for our trip to the sun. Sophia's eyes widened. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Apollo, her little hamster friend, was talking to her. She stared at him in disbelief, wondering if she was still dreaming. "Apollo, how are you doing this?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Are you some kind of magic creature?" Apollo chuckled. "No, Sophia, I'm just a hamster. But I've always been able to talk. I just haven't wanted to show everyone my special ability." "Should I call the police?" Sophia asked, her voice laced with fear. "Or tell my parents? What's happening?" Apollo shook his head. No, Sophia. There's no need to be afraid. I'm just a hamster, like I said, and I can talk because I'm special. But it's not something that needs to be shared with the world. Can you keep it a secret, just between us?" "Okay, Apollo," she said, taking a deep breath. "I won't tell anyone. But can you please explain to me what's going on? I'm really confused right now." Apollo smiled and patted Sophia on the head. "Of course, Sophia. I'll explain everything. But first, let's go on an adventure to the sun. It will be a lot of fun, I promise." "The sun? But isn't it really hot? Won't we get burned up?" Apollo chuckled. "Don't worry, Sophia. The sun is the largest thing in the solar system, but it's also really far away. We'll be safe in the space shuttle, and think about all the amazing things we'll see. The sun has a surface temperature of about 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit." Sophia gasped. "That's so hot! How can anything survive in those temperatures?" "Well, we won't be going to the surface of the sun," Apollo explained. "But we'll still be able to see some amazing things. The sun is constantly spewing out solar flares and solar winds, and it's home to giant storms called sunspots. It's really amazing, Sophia, and I want to show it all to you." Sophia couldn't wait. She jumped out of bed and began helping Apollo prepare the space shuttle for their trip to the sun. She knew it was going to be an adventure she would never forget. And with that, Sophia and Apollo set off on their journey to the sun, leaving all of Sophia's fears and doubts behind. As Apollo worked the controls, Sophia looked out the window, watching as the Earth grew smaller and smaller in the distance. "Look at that, Sophia," Apollo said, pointing at the stars. "We're really in space now. Isn't it amazing?" Sophia couldn't believe what she was seeing. The stars were so bright and beautiful, and the darkness of space was unlike anything she had ever seen. She felt a sense of awe wash over her as she took it all in. As they flew through the darkness, they passed the moon, its craggy surface illuminated by the sun's rays. Sophia couldn't help but think of her granny and how much she would have loved to see all of this. "I miss my granny," Sophia said softly, a tear rolling down her cheek. "I wish she could be here with us. Apollo placed a comforting paw on Sophia's shoulder. I know, Sophia, but your granny is still with you, in spirit, and she would be so proud of you for following your dreams and going on this adventure. Just think of all the amazing things you'll be able to tell her when you see her again. As they flew closer to the sun, Sophia couldn't believe the sights she was seeing. The sun was growing larger and larger in the window, its surface a swirling mass of hot gases and intense heat. Sophia gasped as she saw a massive sun flare shooting out from the sun's surface. It was a beautiful sight, with colors ranging from deep red to bright gold. She'd never seen anything like it before. Apollo beamed with pride, pleased to be able to show Sophia something so beautiful. Isn't it amazing, Sophia? He said. I told you the sun was something special. Sophia nodded, still in awe of the sights before her. But then, something unexpected happened. Apollo was studying the dials on the space shuttle, trying to make sense of what was happening. Suddenly, his face turned to one of concern. Sophia, we've traveled too close to the sun. A massive sunstorm is about to happen, he warned her, trying to keep his voice calm. Sophia, who had been staring out the window in awe, turned to him in alarm. What do we do? Apollo quickly began working on the controls, trying to steer the shuttle away from the sun. I'm trying to escape the storm, but it's much stronger than I anticipated. Sunstorms can reach temperatures as high as 100,000 degrees Fahrenheit and can burst several million kilometers into space, he explained as he worked. But despite Apollo's best efforts, the sunstorm outburst hit them with full force, pushing the shuttle away from the sun and sending it hurtling through space. Sophia cried out in fear as she felt the force of the storm. As the storm subsided, Apollo and Sophia found themselves in an unfamiliar place. The stars and galaxies around them looked different from anything they had seen before. It looks like we've been pushed into a mysterious black hole, Sophia. It's probably a wormhole that's taken us to another star, Apollo said, trying to sound optimistic. Sophia looked out the window in amazement at the new star they had stumbled upon. It was a deep red color and was much larger than their own sun. It's so beautiful, she said in awe. But Apollo's expression was grave. This is a red supergiant, Sophia. It's on the brink of collapsing in on itself and going supernova. Sophia's face fell as she realized the danger they were in. Apollo continued. The explosion will be incredibly bright and will reach temperatures as high as 100 billion degrees Fahrenheit. It's going to be a massive explosion and we need to get out of here before it happens. Sophia nodded, her mind racing with thoughts of escaping the impending explosion. Apollo quickly began working on the navigation system, trying to find a way to get them back home before it was too late. As Apollo worked frantically on the navigation system, he soon realized that the heat from the sunstorm and the red giant had damaged it beyond repair. He turned to Sophia, feeling defeated. The navigation system is fried, Sophia. I don't know how we're going to get back home, he said, his voice filled with frustration. Sophia, who had been quietly thinking, suddenly had an idea. What about the cooling gas in the shuttle, Apollo? Couldn't we use that to cool down the navigation system and fix it? Apollo looked at her in surprise, and then quickly thought about it. That's a brilliant idea, Sophia. We can use the cooling gas to lower the temperature of the navigation system and maybe it'll be able to function again, he exclaimed. The two of them quickly went to work, but as he worked, he began to have doubts. Sophia, are you sure about this? If we use all the cooling gas, the rest of the systems on the shuttle could fail, he said, looking at her with a hint of skepticism. Sophia's face fell. I trust you, Apollo. You're always coming up with great ideas, so why can't I? I know this will work. We just have to trust each other, she said, her voice filled with determination. Apollo could see the determination in her eyes and knew that she truly believed in her idea. He took a deep breath and decided to trust her. Together, they worked to cool down the navigation system, and to their surprise and relief, it worked. Just as the red giant was about to go supernova, the navigation system came back to life. We did it, Sophia! We can fly again! Apollo shouted triumphantly. Suddenly, the space around them became eerily silent. It was as if they were deep underwater. The only sound was the hum of the space shuttle's engines. They both looked out the window and were met with a breathtaking sight. The red giant had gone supernova, and the explosion was even more magnificent and terrifying than they could have ever imagined. Both of them were rendered speechless, staring at the explosion in awe and fear. But Apollo quickly snapped out of it, realizing they were still in danger. He quickly navigated the shuttle back towards the wormhole, while Sophia remained frozen, still in shock from what they had just witnessed. As they entered the wormhole, they were met with a bright light and a sensation of being pulled through a tunnel. And just as suddenly as it had started, it was over. They emerged back in their own solar system, close to Earth. Sophia let out a sigh of relief as she saw the familiar blue and green planet, tears streaming down her face from the emotional overload. Apollo, who had been focused on flying the shuttle, looked over at Sophia, feeling a sense of pride in his young companion for being able to take in such a sight. "We made it, Sophia. We're home," he said, smiling at her. "We made it back home thanks to your quick thinking." Sophia felt a strange feeling in her chest as she looked out the window of the space shuttle, taking in the sight of Earth. She realized that she felt proud of herself for her quick thinking and for helping Apollo fix the navigation system. It was a feeling she wasn't accustomed to, as her family had always had high expectations for her, and she was used to feeling a sense of pressure. Apollo, noticing the change in her demeanor, turned to her and said, "You should be proud of yourself, Sophia. You saved us from certain disaster." Sophia nodded, still taking in the feeling. "But why did the red giant have to explode? Why did it have to destroy itself?" she asked, still trying to understand what had just happened. Apollo smiled gently at her. "It's just the way of things in space, Sophia. Stars are constantly being born and dying. The explosion of a supernova is actually what creates all the elements in the universe, including the ones that make up our own bodies. We are literally made of stardust," he explained. Sophia's eyes widened in amazement as she processed this new information. "But what about our own sun? Will it explode too?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. Apollo shook his head. "No, our sun is too small to go supernova. It will eventually turn into a red giant, but that won't happen for billions of years. We have nothing to worry about," he reassured her. Sophia felt a sense of relief wash over her as she realized that the sun, like everything else in space, was just following its natural course of life. And with that realization, she knew that she, too, would follow her own path and make her own mark on the world. Sophia smiled and hugged Apollo, feeling grateful for the little hamster who had shown her the beauty of the universe. But as she hugged him, she began to feel incredibly tired. Her eyes drooped and her head began to feel heavy. Apollo noticed her exhaustion. He noticed that Sophia was becoming more and more dizzy and knew that she needed to rest. Despite her efforts to stay awake, she was clearly unable to fight the fatigue any longer. "It's okay, Sophia. You're safe now," Apollo whispered soothingly as he nuzzled her hair. "Just close your eyes and let yourself rest." Sophia's eyes fluttered closed, and she let out a deep sigh as she finally succumbed to sleep. Apollo watched her sleep and felt happy that she felt secure enough around him to let herself rest. As she slept, Apollo realized that this was the best adventure he could ever have, the one of making her happy and secure. He cuddled her and whispered, "Sweet dreams, Sophia," as she slowly and peacefully fell asleep. After a few moments, Sophia opened her eyes again. Back in the familiar setting of her room, the alarm clock blared and woke her up. She was back in her bed, and she could see her room. Glancing over at the hamster cage, Apollo appeared to be asleep. The events from the night before were hazy in Sophia's mind, unable to distinguish if it was all a dream or reality. Sitting there in contemplation, trying to remember the details of her adventure. Was it just a dream? Or had the journey to the sun with Apollo been real? Sophia shook her head, attempting to clear the confusion. Regardless of what had occurred, one thing was for certain. The experience had been so vivid, and it only reinforced the appreciation for the beauty of the universe and the small things in life.